Welcome to A Window on SAHMRI, where we take you inside South Australia's independent not-for-profit health and medical research institute. Each episode, we get to know the people driving our life-changing research, getting into what motivates them personally and how their work is delivering a brighter, healthier future for all.
Chady, can you start by simply explaining what MITRU does?
So MITRU is the Molecular Imaging and Therapy Research Unit. It is that's where we house our cyclotron, which is the only proton accelerator in South Australia. So we use the isotope that we manufacture on that cyclotron to manufacture radiopharmaceuticals for our patients. So we have some products that goes every day to the clinics to help with the imaging technique called PET scan. And we have some products that we use for internal research. So that is, in general, what we do.
That was a good summary. Ed, what are radiopharmaceuticals? Pretend that I'm a kid and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so if you're familiar with what a pharmaceutical would be, is a drug that acts in a certain way. We want to look inside a person's body, and the way we choose to do that is to actually incorporate a radioisotope to that drug. So we can actually watch the distribution of that radioisotope using PET scanners and SPECT scanners to actually pick up where that happens to be in the body. And the images that are created actually build up a three-dimensional distribution of the drug in the body, so we can actually work out where it goes, what it does.
And this is an intravenous injection sometimes, which allows the scanners to pick up those images. Can you deliver radiopharmaceuticals in other ways as well?
Well, yes. That's the good thing about radiopharmaceutical. They are almost like other formulations. So you will find some that are injectable, some that are in form of pills, and some of them are to be inhaled. They are gas. So yes, although the most general or most requested form is intravenous injection, there are some radiopharmaceuticals that comes in capsules, and some of them that comes in as a gas that the patient will inhale.
And what first got you interested in molecular imaging and radiopharmaceuticals?
Well, actually, it was shortly after I graduated, a long time ago. And I found these job ad that says we need a chemist at a hospital. So what a chemist does at a hospital? During my study, everything we were prepared for is industry, manufacturing, mining. Someone asking for a chemist at a hospital wasn't really something that you hear every day. So I went there, and then that was an interview with the CEO directly, because he wanted to have close look and control over this project. And he said, I bought a cyclotron and I wanted to work on it. Do you know what a cyclotron is? And I remembered one of the courses at uni that had the cyclotron, and then explained it to him. He said, you know what? I had 100 applicants and you're the only one who explained cyclotron. I think I'll hire you.
Boom. That worked out well.
Yeah.
So before you knew it, you were the cyclotron operator.
Yes. On the first one in the country. Yeah.
And did you feel like you knew what you were doing from that uni course?
I had to do a lot of training, so that was the rest of that interview. Is okay. So I know what it is. That doesn't mean I know how to work on it. I've never worked on this. I worked on all the other analytical equipment. I know chemistry, and yes, there was a lot of follow-up trainings. I went to Europe for a long time. I spent time at the manufacturer's site. I spent time at production site that are similar to the one that we were trying to build. And you get experience. You get contact with people, with researchers, with patients, with doctors, and you build your expertise there.
So how long ago did you first start with the cyclotron?
That was in year 2000. A bit.
Quarter of a century, some might say. Ed, what about you?
Well, I very similar to Chady in that my career had gone down a very sort of academic path, postdoctoral positions, again, sort of looking at chemistries that are more applicable to industry and polymer manufacturing, catalysis. I found myself in a position where I was no more postdocs. I applied for a job at a chemistry facility within a hospital. It happened to be Hammersmith Hospital, which was home to the first cyclotron in a hospital facility. The challenge of doing radioactive chemistry with these very short half-lives was an excellent opportunity. This was before we had to deliver to such high standards. So some of the homemade equipment that we were able to use was very much some real Frankenstein stuff, really. But we put it together and we were able to make radiopharmaceuticals for injection into human beings to actually visualize biological functions. So it was a no-brainer. It was something I wanted to get into, and that was 2003. So pretty similar.
What did you think when you first did that successfully and you were seeing that happen for the first time?
The first time you see a molecule, it's never just you. There's always hundreds of other people, seemingly hundreds of other people
Very
involved.
humbled.
But when you've made a molecule in a chemistry lab, that you've seen that transition all the way through to a radiochemistry development, to a manufacture, to deliver to a patient, I don't really think you can put words to it. It's a fantastic experience, especially if you hope that the tracers that you're developing will actually help that individual with whatever disease that they're actually suffering from. And so, yeah, it's an amazing experience.
And you've worked in the UK, as you said, Singapore and Australia. How's being in those places shaped your approach to research?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I mean, from a UK perspective, obviously, I grew up in the UK, so I was very sort of familiar with UK academics and the way you'd sort of approach research from that perspective. Moving to London and to Hammersmith, I became part of a commercial organisation ultimately. So that really changes how you approach research, because now you've got, rather than the sort of open-ended research programs that academia has enjoyed in the past, now you've got very much more time-bound, KPI-bound programs of work. That helped immeasurably when going to, say, somewhere like Singapore, because they have a foot in either side, sort of half academic, half commercial, certainly at A-Star, and then bringing that experience into to SAHMRI, where we do a very similar thing. You know, we know we need to meet the timelines and the KPIs of the commercial partners, but we also, through working with them, it also gives us the freedom to do more academic research as well. So with, you know, colleagues at SAHMRI and the university, etc. So corporate research, academic research, they can be quite different, although they are coming together. There's a lot more KPIs and targets to hit within academic research now. So I think overall it's been a very valuable experience to work.
You feel like you've got sort of the best of both worlds, current situation?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got to be careful. You're neither one nor the other, but actually having an appreciation of both, I think, is actually important, because we certainly do understand the time limitations and of some of our commercial partners. We recognise their what they need to deliver, and of course that rolls into what we need to deliver.
Got to keep everyone happy. Chady, tell us a bit about the path you've been on to get to SAHMRI.
So my path was a little bit different. So I started with, there was no established cyclotron, so I started with an empty parking, and we had to, that was converted into a cyclotron vault, chemistry lab, quality control lab, and the imaging department was 2 stories above, like almost most of the cyclotron facilities that I've seen in Australia. Cyclotron is always on the ground and everyone else is above. So we started like this, and I did my thesis actually while working between the hospital and the university, and I got a lot of experience. And then I got a phone call from Abu Dhabi that, hey, we're building a first cyclotron here and we need someone with your expertise to help us do that. Again, I was the first radiochemist operating a cyclotron in Abu Dhabi, and we did a great job. We grew the facility from really the ground up. It was just a desert. That cyclotron wasn't on the ground though. It was just the ground level. There were windows. So while you're in a clean room, you can see actually the sun. That was a good thing.
And that's okay to have it above ground and have windows? Is it just that we prefer not to have windows?
Look, if you have the space, you can have everything flat. The problem is usually cyclotrons are incorporated either into research facility, universities or hospitals, and the only space that can support 10 tons of steel is on the ground. It's really difficult to put it on a higher level. But the ground level is fine if you have nothing underneath.
So radiochemists were very much in demand. It sounds like you were about the only one in the world at that time that they were. You kept getting the phone call.
Well, at some point you feel like it, but it is still, even now, many, many years after the explosion of nuclear medicine and a lot of treatments and imaging, radiopharmacists or radiochemists or radiopharmaceutical scientists are still in high demand. There is a big shortage of these people.
But more opportunities now for people.
Yes, and a lot more. And the future is also, it looks bright for everyone who wants to get into this. Yeah.
What is it about the job that you guys do that challenges you the most? Or what do you lay there at night thinking about trying to solve more often than not?
I'm going to say it from an R&D perspective. It's good manufacturing practice. So these are guides, but they're very, very strict and enforced guides by people like the TGA. They are our regulators. We are a TGA licensed facility for the manufacture of radiopharmaceuticals. That brings with it a standard that you have to achieve every single day, and there's no dropping from it. We've got a little bit more flexibility in R&D, but the thing is we use some of the same equipment, so that flexibility disappears. We have to be 100% accountable for everything and anything and anyone who's done anything in our facility. It's an awful lot of undertaking. And I don't know that people really understand how much time that actually takes up for us.
So checks and balances is a constant.
Yeah. So GMP is one of these very important things that you have to think about all the time. But compliance in general is a little bit wider. But it all focuses in the end at patient safety. So in the end, we are making a product that will be injected into someone. And there are 1,000 things that can go wrong.
The stakes are high.
And yeah, our job is to make sure none of these happen. And the patient get the drug and hopefully get a positive outcome.
So you can't have mistakes.
Yeah, that's what our work is you cannot send a product with any form of defect in it. So it should be a perfect product every time, every day.
And you're not just manufacturing, but you're also innovating, creating new products as well. What's it like having to be absolutely perfect with that? Like, do you know the result, you've seen it 100 times, you're sure it's going to work, you check it again. Is that the feeling, or you've been doing it for so long now?
No, that's still the feeling. I mean, again, when you're in that earlier phase, yes, you're going to make mistakes, and you do not have to be perfect. That product's not going into a human, or it's probably not going to any imaging study. But you're trying to get to a point where that manufacturing is going to go there. So you always got to keep it in mind. But you can make mistakes at an very early stage, but you make them there. So as Chady says, you get it perfect every time. Yep. Once you've gone through the whole process. So.
Each phase of the process is different, have different objectives. So when you have an idea, everything starts with someone having an idea. You can go wild. You can go wherever you want. You can do 10,000 trials and all fail, and that's not a problem. As long as you're gathering information for the next step. The next step would be, okay, for example, let's talk about one of the targets for our therapy or imaging. We found a target that have possibilities, and then we found a tracer that can attack this target. We move to the next step. How can we make that every day the same way? That is still in the lab, and then you test it preclinically, and then you start testing it on volunteers, etc. And each one of these phases have different objectives and different methods and different standards to follow. Although the regulatory compliance is at every step, it is much harder in the end.
Is there a typical timeline from conception, we came up with this idea of a new tracer that's going to serve this novel function, to it's now used in humans, or does that vary wildly?
It can vary wildly. It really can. I mean, if you think about sort of normal drug development over many, many years and many different phases, the development of PET radiopharmaceuticals is not dissimilar. The attrition rate is about the same as well. So you can fail at almost every given stage. I've seen it happen from sort of concept through to first in human over about a 5-6 year period, which was pretty good. So if that's pretty good, I think a few will take a lot longer. And then into routine clinical practice, well, that's difficult to time because it needs adoption by the clinical community, and that in itself can be a real challenge to overcome.
What's the ratio of time and energy being committed to innovation, new tracers versus manufacturing current ones at MITRU?
At MITRU, the effort, I'd say 50-50. The time and effort combined together. Yeah. Although it might seem that manufacturing takes longer time, but with a small team of researchers, they're spending a lot of time focusing on bringing new products online. Yeah.
What was the last new product that was exciting for you guys to work on developing? Or what did it allow for, or what do you hope it will allow for?
Well, there are many exciting products that we're working for. For example, with tracers for Alzheimer, for example, and being so close, that gives hope, not just for the patients, but for everyone, really. Alzheimer is a disease that no one should suffer from. And we should be able to be diagnosing it, preventing it, treating it very soon. And that's a good, exciting outcome from a work that we're contributing to.
And developing tracers to work in that area of the body that can image the brain in different ways that allow people you collaborate with to come up with better interventions. And
yes,
that's how it works.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to mention when you asked your previous question, is that radiopharmaceuticals are not just you start from point A and reach point B. Many are interconnected. So the path that we use to reach that endpoint with the product X will help product Y being developed much faster. So we don't start from scratch every time. We build on the expertise and the method that we develop from a certain product to accelerate the next one.
Certain elements are relevant across the products that you're developing, and then you have to figure out the answer to a new question to be able to further one versus another. But I understand what you're saying, which is good that you don't have to start from scratch every time, because I imagine it's pretty difficult to get to a point where you're close to cracking it. What made you realize that you were in the right field and you wanted to spend so much time underground?
Well, you need to have that personality, that character, right? You can't be someone, let's say, who loves sleeping until midday and choose a work in manufacturing radiopharmaceutical. So for me personally, I was a morning person the whole my life. So when they told me, you have to start super early in the morning, fine, less time to waste in the morning then. And everything in this business for me, it seems like it just designed for me. During my university years, I was a volunteer as a first aid responder with the Red Cross in Lebanon. And when I started working at the hospital, being so close to the patient, making things that will actually help them. So I was helping people at night and helping people during the day. That was the perfect job for me. It was fulfilling scientifically, it was fulfilling from a humanitarian perspective, and it just chews up a lot of your time. So your family kind of misses you sometimes.
Do you have helping people in mind when you're doing your job now? Is that
I try, and I try not just to remind myself, I remind everyone in my team that remember what we're doing is going to someone, and that someone is sick, they are weak, they are waiting for your help. The last thing they want to see is a product that didn't work. We don't allow this to happen. Or not even the product that is late. And that person is not alone on the other side. That person have a partner, have sons, daughters, parents waiting for them. So you're not just impacting the life of one person. There are families there, group of people, friends that will be impacted by what we do. So we better do a great job.
Very well explained. Because if you don't get your process right and you're not doing all those checks and balances and you're not hitting those quotas every day, then that translates to people not being able to have their scans and not be able to get their diseases detected or have the treatments that they need. And it comes down to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, and that's the role that we're trying to play. And, you know, similar to Chady, it's, for me, again, it's that the human at the end of it that is actually going to benefit. And as Chady rightly says, it's not just that individual, it will be all their families and friends that actually also see the benefit in what we do. As a small part in this big chain of patient management, right? And again, that was very much a driving force for me. But again, for me, again, one of these things, it's scientifically broad. We're chemists trained, but cyclotron is very much physics. The biology that we try and observe is there, and we need people to help us with the image reconstruction. They're mathematicians. You need a breadth of people. So being part of a broad team that has actually got human health at the end of it as an objective, it's brilliant to bring all those different peoples together.
Tell us a bit more about that team. And you don't have to identify some and not others. You can if you want, but I suppose as a collective and what they all bring that's different, and what makes MITRU work under these demands that you're under on a daily basis.
Yeah, so most of the team are radiopharmaceutical scientists. So that is how I can explain, that's the crossroad between chemistry and pharmacy. Someone who understands chemistry, manufacturing the drug, labeling it with isotopes, analyzing it for impurities, for efficiency, for potency, etc. But at the same time, understanding the biological interaction that will happen on the other end. And each one of these scientists should have that in mind. So it is a multidisciplinary environment. You need engineers, you need mathematicians, you need medical physics. Also, you need quality assurance people. Did I forget someone? So yeah, that work is a combination of all these expertise. So when I started, for example, I will take myself as an example. I was a chemist. My background is chemistry. I specialized in pharmacology and drug design, but I knew nothing about, let's say, the physics of a cyclotron, how to accelerate a proton, why we accelerate it to that energy, how to control it. All these things I had to learn from scratch. On top of this, working in a cyclotron facility, you have to be a plumber, you have to be an electrician, you have to be a handyman, because when things break at 4 a.m, there are very few people who are able to help you at that time. So if you see a leak in the cyclotron and you're trained and you understand what happened there, you can do something really simple just to get it through that science of irradiation while someone is on the way to do the bigger fix. There are a lot of things that really help the day, knowing all these. And we have, for example, Nick and Keshika, who are our engineer, but they are also radiochemists. So they understand the chemistry, the manufacturing, the quality control, but they are our experts when it comes to cyclotron maintenance and troubleshooting. Although we have a really good contract with the manufacturer, who is General Electric, and they have really good engineers and they take care of the cyclotron really well. But for example, when something happens, we don't call them, hey, it's broken, we don't know what happened. We call them, we tell them, this is wrong. Bring that part and come to fix it. That's most of the time it's like this.
Yes, you have to have that real deep understanding and some patience for receiving early morning phone calls as well.
Yes, it is. I don't want to say it's a disaster, but yeah, it is. It can be disastrous on the other hand. We stop manufacturing, we lose everything that we did until that time, but also we have to call all the clients. In their turn, people at the scanning facility, they have to call all the patients.
Yes, there's the chain reaction and the clock's always ticking.
And then most of the clinics these days are at their capacity and they have a waiting list of people. So when you push the full day of patient to another day, it is really annoying and some people will suffer.
Brings me to my next question of how do you de-stress and try to remove yourself from that constant pressure, Ed?
Well, obviously, one of the attractions of moving to Adelaide was the festivals and the nightlife and all the things to do here. I know I've got friends in Melbourne that seem to think that Melbourne's the be-all and end-all. I think they're wrong.
I don't think anyone believes that anymore.
Okay, that's good. But no, I mean, enjoy living here. Enjoy a drink, some nice food, and there's plenty of both.
Okay, so you find you're able to switch off sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. With varying degrees of success.
Varying degrees of success.
Yeah. And you, Chady, I know you're a bit of a weapon, a secret weapon with the martial arts and like your training. It's important to you?
Nowadays, I'm not allowed to do a lot of these things, and for obvious reasons.
Because you're too dangerous to others or yourself?
Because my joints are too old for this these days. So yeah, I used to be...
Maybe there's a radioisotope for that. You could work on something.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But that's a different discussion. I like physical activities. I've been a rock climber, mountain climber for a long time. There is a shortage of big mountains here, but I still do it within a gym environment. Other than the martial arts, I am a very active person, and my kids are also very active. So we participate in a lot of things together. They like swimming, hiking, cycling. So we introduce some of these at least 2 or 3 times a week. So yeah.
And is the body holding up enough to allow you to keep doing these things you love?
You know, you push to the very limit, and when it breaks, you stop and take a step back.
And is that important to giving you the energy to be able to do what you do, like looking after yourself physically and having that space?
Yeah, I think when I do too much activity, that's what other people tell me. That's too much. Why are you still doing this? That's when I come back on a Monday, super early in the morning, very fresh and ready for anything. When I have a weekend where nothing happens, that's when I arrive to work tired on Monday.
Do you talk about the lifestyle component with the rest of your team, or is that something that you're conscious of, like the kind of health that your colleagues are in and what, I mean, obviously it's their decision what they get up to, but do you think that's important for everyone in your line of work to be taking care of themselves and having a life outside of the bunker?
Most of the team members are inspiring for me because most of them are super active. They have their own focus outside work, and most of it is physical activities. So I don't want to be slacking behind. So they are my source of inspiration. Yeah.
Ed, where do you see the future going with the cyclotron and this sort of radiopharmaceutical manufacturing? Where do you think it could go in the coming decades?
Well, I don't think it's a case of where it could go, where is it going? We are developing, and we being the field now, many new radiopharmaceuticals for imaging, but alongside that, there are therapeutic radiopharmaceuticals that are becoming increasingly popular and moving earlier into intervention. So, I mean, there's a big push now to get some of these therapeutic products into earlier phase of intervention, because the efficacy that seems to be showing is that good compared to conventional treatments. The quality of life people are starting to experience in certain indications is far better than some of the standard of care right now. I only see that getting increasingly important. There's now a range of new isotopes that people are now utilizing for radiopharmaceuticals as well. So we're not just stuck with the same few that we had in the past. That's opening up new and new avenues, new rounds of therapeutic intervention. I think we're only going to see more and more. I think it's getting increasingly popular.
And that's because of its capacity to be targeted.
Absolutely, it is, yeah. And to leave healthy tissues alone and target only your tumors or the target of interest, yeah.
What do you think, Chady? What are you most
there are
about?
a lot of development in every aspect of our. So radiopharmaceutical, as it was explained in the beginning, it is something that has a carrier and an isotope and a linker in between. There are development on each one of these parts of the radiopharmaceutical. So in terms of carrier, we're always finding new innovations, someone who found a new idea. For example, it was a small molecule, it was a peptide, which is a fragment of a protein, it was protein, and there are also antibodies. So these were the big groups of carriers. But then we noticed that there are groups, okay, what if we use the fraction of the antibody, not all of it? So we see the nanobodies now that are very successful. The linkers, there are a lot of improvement on the quality and the type of linkers to be able to attach different type of payload. And the payload can be really not just an isotope for imaging. We can now put isotopes for therapy. We started with some of those. Using isotope for therapy dated back to the 30s, 1930s. We're using iodine for treating the thyroid, but yeah, we are a long way from that. We are using a lot of new isotopes, and every few years we discover something that can work. So we find a linker for it, put it on a carrier, and try to do something new with it. And even I've seen a lot of the payload that is not radioactive. Again, that's a totally different universe when you start putting things that are not isotopes.
How much has manufacturing grown since 2015 when MITRU started, and how much of a role will MITRU and SAHMRI play in this future that you're talking about?
So there is the natural growth of demand, but also the presence of MITRU in South Australia helped a lot. Without the cyclotron in this state, we are relying on shipping things from interstate. And there are a lot of limitation in capacity, in logistics. You may not have enough flights or shipments, whatever. COVID told us a lot of things in this term. And not only COVID, the big problems like blocking the Suez Canal, like the war in the Middle East, like the Russia-Ukraine war. All these things have impacts. If you don't have your own capacity, you will suffer and your patient will suffer. So the presence of MITRU in South Australia helped a lot. We have our kind of own independence. We make sure that we procure everything we need for a long time so we can help our patient without interruption. But we've seen that growth, which was moving from 1 or 2 batches of FDG per week to making enough for about more than 1,000 or 1,500 per month, which is pretty good. We're keeping up with the demand. There are more clinical sites that are requesting our product. There are more researchers that are requesting our services. And we have researchers in our team that have their own ideas that we'd like to develop and hopefully get to the market.
What mark do you want to leave on being at SAHMRI?
I think it would be the same as everywhere else I've been, to actually have a positive impact on the number of projects that we've ultimately got going, the research into trying to devise new radiopharmaceuticals for diagnostics and therapeutics, but diagnostics initially. And to be able to actually expand out what has been available in South Australia. Right now, as Chady said previously, without a cyclotron, you have to rely on other states. For some products, we're still doing that. We don't want to be doing that. We want to be able to demonstrate that we can stand on our own 2 feet, and we're more than capable of doing it. So that's one of the things that I want to leave.
Do you miss the weather in the UK?
It's been a very long time since I've been in the UK to enjoy its weather, and no is the answer.
Okay, so I hope we get to keep you here in Australia.
Yes, so. Well, as the director of MITRU, I have to keep that balance between keeping the momentum of research, but also keeping up with the demand of every day's product that we have to supply to our patients. That is really invigorating sometimes, but yeah, sometimes it has its toll on me. But yeah, I really enjoy it, and I have a great team to support me.
Well, thanks for giving us that insight, gents. And it sounds like a lot of hard work, but hard work that you're up to doing and something that means a lot to you. And you're obviously doing a cracker of a job at it. And you got some grey in the beard, but the hair's still mostly nice and dark, Chady. So I think you got quite a few years in you yet.
Much.
We won't mention Ed there.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about SAHMRI and the researchers working to build a brighter, healthier future for you and your family, head to samhri.org.au.